The Galactic Council chambers had never seen such tension. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes as he glared across the crystalline table at the human delegation. 200 years had passed since the Treaty of Proxima ended the bloodiest conflict in galactic history, and now these upstart humans dared to question the sacred document. The terms were clear. Kethvar's translator buzzed in mechanical tones. Humanity agreed to remain within their designated sectors. No expansion beyond the Sol barrier. No military vessels past the neutral zone. General Marcus Chen, Earth's chief military representative, sat perfectly still. His weathered face showed no emotion as he listened to the aliens' complaints. Behind him, 3 other species nodded in agreement with the Zephyrian. The Krillian Collective's insectoid ambassador clicked his mandibles approvingly. The crystalline beings of Theros hummed in harmonious accord. "We have honored every clause of that treaty," Chen replied calmly. "Every single one." "Then explain this," Kethvar hissed, activating a holographic display. The image showed a lone figure in distinctive military fatigues, moving through what appeared to be a desolate asteroid field. "Your soldier was detected in Sector 847, well beyond your permitted boundaries." Chen leaned forward slightly, studying the image. The figure wore the unmistakable uniform of a United States Marine. Even from the grainy surveillance footage, he could make out the eagle, globe, and anchor emblem on the soldier's chest plate. "That's Lance Corporal Sarah Mitchell," Chen said matter-of-factly. "And she wasn't violating any treaty." The chamber erupted in angry, chittering, mechanical whirs and harmonic protests. Kethvar's 4 eyes blazed with indignation. She was clearly in forbidden territory. "She was responding to a distress call," Chen continued, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. A civilian mining vessel from the Outer Rim Consortium reported engine failure and life support systems failing. Their ship was drifting toward that asteroid field. The Krillian ambassador's translator crackled to life. "The treaty specifically states that human military personnel cannot cross the barrier under any circumstances. No exceptions were written into the agreement." Chen's aide, Commander Sarah Torres, placed a data pad on the table. "Actually, Article 7, Subsection C clearly states that humanitarian missions are exempt from boundary restrictions, provided they are documented and reported within 72 standard hours." The aliens exchanged glances. Kethvar's tentacles writhed with barely contained anger. "Show us this documentation." Torres activated another hologram. The distress call played through the chamber's speakers, a desperate voice pleading for help in heavily accented Standard Galactic. The timestamp showed it had been received 48 hours ago. The response logs showed Lance Corporal Mitchell's unit had been the closest available rescue team. The mining ship contained 47 beings from 6 different species, Chen added, including 2 Zephyrian nationals. The revelation sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. Kethvar's expression shifted from anger to confusion. That cannot be verified." "It can, and it will be," Torres said, bringing up rescue footage. The hologram now showed Mitchell's squad working tirelessly to evacuate the damaged vessel. Her team moved with precision and efficiency, carrying injured miners to safety shuttles. One of the rescued beings was clearly Zephyrian, his distinctive blue-scaled skin and 4-armed physique unmistakable. "The rescued miners are currently receiving medical treatment aboard the civilian vessel New Horizon," Chen continued. "They're all alive because one U.S. Marine decided that saving lives was more important than political boundaries." The Krillian ambassador's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This changes nothing. A treaty violation occurred. A life-saving mission occurred," Chen corrected firmly. "And according to the treaty you all signed, it was completely legal. What happened next would be debated in galactic politics for decades to come." The chamber fell silent as the various alien species absorbed the implications. They had spent 2 centuries painting humanity as aggressive expansionists, barely contained by the treaty's restrictions. Yet here was evidence that humans had risked violating those very restrictions not for conquest, but for rescue. Kethvar's voice was quieter when he spoke again. "Where is this Marine now?" "Lance Corporal Mitchell returned to her assigned patrol route once the rescue was complete," Chen replied. She filed her after-action report and resumed normal duties. "We demand to speak with her," the Theros representative chimed in harmonic tones, "to verify these claims." Chen's expression hardened slightly. "You can request an interview through proper diplomatic channels, but understand this. Lance Corporal Mitchell followed both her orders and the treaty to the letter. She saved 47 lives and asked for nothing in return." The truth was more complicated than Chen let on. Mitchell's rescue mission had indeed been legal under the treaty, but it had also revealed something the alien species had hoped to keep hidden. The mining operation in Sector 847 wasn't supposed to exist. It was an illegal extraction site operated by a shadow consortium that included investors from every major galactic power. For 2 centuries, the various species had used the human containment as cover for their own territorial expansions. While humanity remained bottled up in their designated sectors, the Zephyrians, Krillians, and others had quietly carved up the galaxy among themselves. The asteroid field where Mitchell conducted her rescue was supposed to be neutral space, but someone had been mining rare minerals there for decades. The meeting continued for several more hours, but the damage was done. Word of the rescue would spread throughout the galaxy, carried by the very miners Mitchell had saved. Humans, who had been portrayed as barely civilized warmongers, had risked everything to save alien lives. As the session concluded, Kethvar approached Chen privately. "This Marine of yours," he said quietly, his translator barely audible. "What drives her to such actions?" Chen looked at the alien ambassador for a long moment. "You really want to know?" Kethvar nodded slowly. "She's a United States Marine," Chen said simply. "When someone calls for help, she answers. When lives are at stake, she acts. When duty calls, she serves. It's not complicated." "But she risked causing an interstellar incident." "No," Chen corrected. "She prevented a humanitarian disaster. There's a difference." As the alien delegations filed out of the chamber, none of them noticed the small recording device Chen's aide had placed on the table. Every word, every admission about the illegal mining operation had been captured. Humanity had spent 200 years playing by rules designed to limit their expansion, while their former enemies carved up the galaxy in secret. But now the game was about to change. Lance Corporal Sarah Mitchell had no idea that her routine rescue mission would reshape galactic politics. She was currently aboard the patrol vessel USS Determination, writing her after-action report and thinking about the letter she owed her mother. The 47 beings she had saved were recovering nicely, and that was all that mattered to her. What she didn't know was that her actions had just lit a fuse that would burn across the entire galaxy. The Treaty of Proxima had held for 200 years through careful balance and mutual respect. But that balance was built on lies, and Sarah Mitchell had just exposed the truth. The aliens wanted to meet the Marine who had risked everything to save their people. They would get their chance sooner than they thought, but when they did, they would learn something that would shake their understanding of humanity to its core. Some rules were meant to be broken. Some boundaries existed only to be crossed. And some Marines would always answer the call, no matter the cost. 3 days after the council session, Lance Corporal Sarah Mitchell found herself standing in the most secure conference room aboard Starbase Prometheus. The circular chamber was a marvel of human engineering, with walls of transparent aluminum offering a breathtaking view of the nebula beyond. But Sarah wasn't admiring the scenery. She was staring at the 5 alien beings seated across from her, each representing a different galactic power. "Please sit," General Chen gestured to the chair across from the alien delegation. Corporal Mitchell, these representatives have requested to speak with you personally about the rescue operation. Sarah remained standing, her posture rigid and professional. At 26 years old, she had already seen more combat than most soldiers twice her age. The burn scar running from her left temple to her jawline was a souvenir from the Outer Rim pirate conflicts. Her gray eyes held a steadiness that made even the alien ambassadors uncomfortable. "With respect, sir, I prefer to stand," she said simply. Kethvar leaned forward, his forearms folded in what his species considered a gesture of serious attention. "Corporal Mitchell, your actions 3 days ago have caused considerable debate within the Galactic Council. We wish to understand your motivations." "Motivations?" Sarah's voice carried a hint of confusion. 47 beings were about to die. I had the training and equipment to save them. What other motivation would I need? The Krillian ambassador, Victor, clicked his mandibles rapidly. Through his translator, his voice buzzed with curiosity. "But you must have known the political implications. Crossing into Sector 847 could have been seen as an act of aggression." Sarah's expression didn't change. "I knew it was legal under Article 7 of the treaty. I also knew that if I didn't act, innocent people would die. The politics didn't factor into my decision." "Remarkable," hummed the Theros representative, Harmony of Distant Stars. "Your species truly prioritizes individual life over political considerations?" "My species has many priorities," Sarah replied carefully. "But where I come from, we have a saying, leave no one behind. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, friend or stranger. If someone needs help and you can provide it, you act." What followed was the most unusual interrogation in galactic history. The alien representatives had expected to meet a typical human soldier, aggressive, territorial, and prone to violence. Instead, they found themselves face to face with someone who had risked her career and potentially her life for the sake of complete strangers. The Vorthak ambassador, a massive crystalline being named Resonance Prime, spoke in deep, thrumming tones. "We have studied human military doctrine extensively. Your species is known for tactical aggression and territorial expansion, yet you acted with no apparent regard for strategic advantage." Sarah's jaw tightened slightly. "Whoever told you that doesn't know much about Marines, sir. We fight when we have to, but our first mission is to protect. Sometimes that means fighting. Sometimes it means rescue operations. Sometimes it means putting yourself between danger and innocent people." Kethvar activated a holographic display showing Sarah's service record. "You have participated in 17 combat operations over the past 5 years. Each time you were noted for what your commanders call excessive risk-taking to preserve civilian life." "Why?" "Because that's the job," Sarah answered without hesitation. "You don't abandon people just because it's dangerous." The aliens exchanged glances that their various species interpreted as confusion and growing concern. The Krillian ambassador pulled up additional files. "According to these reports, you once carried a wounded Zephyrian child through 3 miles of hostile territory during the Kepler Station incident." "I did." "The child was not human. You had no obligation to risk your life." Sarah's gray eyes hardened. "Every child deserves protection. Species doesn't matter." "But your commanding officer had ordered a tactical withdrawal," Victor pressed. "You disobeyed direct orders." "I followed the spirit of those orders," Sarah corrected. "My CO wanted everyone safe. I made sure that happened." General Chen, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke up. "Corporal Mitchell was reprimanded for the tactical violation and commended for the humanitarian rescue. The Zephyrian child, whose name is Kalaseth, is now studying xenobiology at the University of New Geneva." The revelation hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. Kethvar's tentacles went completely still, a sign of deep shock in Zephyrian body language. "You..." You maintain contact with those you rescue? Sometimes, Sarah admitted. Kayla sends me drawings from her science classes. Last month, she told me she wants to become a doctor to help people like I helped her. The chamber fell into absolute silence. The alien representatives had spent decades studying human military philosophy, looking for weaknesses and aggressive tendencies. They had found detailed analyses of human tactical doctrine, weapons systems, and territorial ambitions. But no one had bothered to interview the individual soldiers who carried out those missions. Harmony of Distant Stars broke the silence with a question that would echo through diplomatic circles for years to come. Corporal Mitchell, if your actions in Sector 847 had triggered a renewal of the war, would you have regretted saving those 47 lives? Sarah considered the question seriously before answering. I would have regretted that war started. I would have done everything in my power to prevent further casualties. But I would not have regretted saving innocent people, even if it meant millions might die in the conflict that followed. That's a false choice, Sarah replied firmly. Saving those 47 people didn't have to cause a war. The only way war would have resulted is if someone decided that human compassion was somehow threatening. The Krillian ambassador leaned back in his chair, his compound eyes reflecting what humans might interpret as surprise. You speak of compassion as a military principle. It's not just military, Sarah said. It's human. When my grandmother was 7 years old, her family fled a war-torn region of Earth. Complete strangers took them in, fed them, protected them, asked for nothing in return. Those strangers weren't soldiers. They were just people who saw other people in need. She paused, looking directly at each alien representative in turn. My great-grandfather fought in one of Earth's last global conflicts. Know what he told me before he died? Sarah, anyone can make enemies. It takes real strength to make friends. That's what humans do. We make friends, even with people who used to be enemies. Kethvar's voice was barely above a whisper when he spoke. Your species has been at peace for over 3 centuries. Internal peace, Sarah corrected. We learned that fighting each other was pointless when there was so much universe to explore and so many people to meet. Why waste energy on conflict when you could use it to help someone instead? The meeting continued for 2 more hours, but the tone had fundamentally shifted. The alien representatives had arrived expecting to meet a warrior. Instead, they had encountered something far more dangerous to their preconceptions, a protector. As the session concluded, Resonance Prime asked one final question. Corporal Mitchell, what do you think of the treaty that has kept our species separate for 2 centuries? Sarah thought carefully before responding. I think it served its purpose after the war. But I also think it's kept us from getting to know each other. When you don't know someone, it's easy to fear them or see them as an enemy. When you've worked together to save lives... She gestured toward the hologram still showing the rescue operation. It's harder to think of them as anything but potential friends. After the aliens left, General Chen approached Sarah privately. Corporal, that was either the most brilliant piece of diplomacy I've ever witnessed or the most dangerous. Sarah looked puzzled. Sir, I just answered their questions honestly. I know, Chen replied with a slight smile. That's what makes it so dangerous. They came here expecting to confirm their fears about human aggression. Instead, you've given them something much worse to worry about. What's that, sir? Hope, Chen said quietly. Hope that the treaty might not be necessary anymore. Hope that our species might actually be able to work together. And hope is always more dangerous than fear, because hope makes people want to change things. As Sarah returned to her quarters, she had no idea that her words were already being transmitted across the galaxy. The alien delegates would return to their respective governments with a completely different picture of humanity than the one they had carried for 2 centuries. But change is never easy, especially when it challenges fundamental assumptions about former enemies. And not everyone in the galaxy wanted peace. The shot came from nowhere. A directed energy pulse that punched through the viewport of Sarah Mitchell's patrol shuttle and missed her head by inches. The plasma round burned a hole clean through the pilot's seat and exited through the rear hull, triggering immediate emergency protocols throughout the small craft. "Contact! Contact! This is Marine Patrol 77 Alpha, taking hostile fire in Sector 851. Sarah's voice cracked over the communications array as she wrestled with the shuttle's controls. Emergency foam was already sealing the hull breach, but the damage to her navigation systems was severe. The attack had come during what should have been a routine patrol along the outer edge of human space. Sarah had been conducting a standard reconnaissance sweep when the energy burst nearly took her head off. Now, as she struggled to identify her attacker, she could see 3 sleek vessels emerging from the shadow of a nearby asteroid. Unknown vessels. "This is Lance Corporal Sarah Mitchell of the United Earth Marine Corps. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came in the form of 2 more energy blasts, both aimed directly at her shuttle's engine compartment. Sarah threw her craft into a desperate, evasive pattern, using every trick her flight instructors had taught her. The shuttle wasn't designed for combat. It was a simple patrol vessel meant for reconnaissance and emergency response. All stations. This is Patrol 77 Alpha. I am under attack by unknown hostiles. Repeat, taking fire from unidentified vessels. My position is..." The third blast took out her primary communications array, leaving Sarah effectively deaf and mute in the vast emptiness of space. But Sarah Mitchell hadn't survived 5 years of combat operations by giving up when things got difficult. She manually activated her emergency beacon, hoping someone would pick up the automated distress signal, and focused on staying alive long enough for help to arrive. The attacking vessels were unlike anything she had encountered before. They were roughly triangular, with sharp edges and a matte black finish that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No identifying marks, no energy signatures she recognized. Whoever was shooting at her wanted to remain anonymous. Sarah's tactical training kicked in as she analyzed the situation. 3 attackers against 1 unarmed patrol shuttle meant she was outgunned and outmaneuvered. Her only advantages were her knowledge of the local asteroid field and her determination to survive long enough to report the attack. She dove toward the largest asteroid, using its bulk to shield her from the incoming fire. The rocky mass was roughly the size of a small moon, honeycombed with mining tunnels and abandoned extraction sites. If she could reach one of those tunnels, she might be able to hide until help arrived. The first pursuing vessel followed her into the asteroid's shadow, its weapons charging for what would certainly be a killing shot. Sarah waited until the last possible moment before cutting power to her engines and letting momentum carry her shuttle into a narrow mining shaft. The pursuing craft, traveling too fast to react, shot past the entrance and crashed into the asteroid's surface in a brilliant explosion. 2 down, 2 to go. Sarah's satisfaction was short-lived. Her shuttle's damage was extensive, and she was now trapped inside a mining tunnel with limited life support. Worse, she could see lights moving outside the tunnel entrance. The remaining attackers were sending in search teams. What followed was a deadly game of hide-and-seek through the abandoned mining complex. Sarah moved from tunnel to tunnel, using her knowledge of military tactics and the layout of the extraction site to stay ahead of her pursuers. But she knew it was only a matter of time before they cornered her. That's when the cavalry arrived. The first sign was a series of explosions echoing through the asteroid's structure. Then came the unmistakable sound of human military vessels engaging the remaining attackers. Sarah's emergency beacon had been received by the USS Determination, the same vessel she had served aboard during the rescue operation 3 days earlier. But the real surprise came when she heard a familiar voice over her shuttle's damaged communication system. "Sarah, this is Admiral Chen. Can you hear me?" General Chen had been promoted following the diplomatic breakthrough with the alien species. He was now commanding a joint task force that included vessels from multiple galactic powers, all of them eager to work with the humans who had shown such remarkable compassion. "Admiral, this is Mitchell. I'm trapped in mining tunnel 77, roughly 2 clicks inside the asteroid. 3 unknown vessels attacked my patrol shuttle. I managed to take out one of them, but the others sent search teams inside." "Copy that, Sarah. We're tracking your beacon. Hold tight. Help is on the way." What Sarah couldn't see from her position deep inside the asteroid was the most unusual rescue operation in galactic history. The USS Determination had arrived with escort vessels from the Zephyrian Empire, the Krillian Collective, and the Theros Commonwealth. The same alien species that had questioned her motivations days earlier were now working alongside human forces to save her life. Kethvar himself was aboard the lead Zephyrian vessel, coordinating the search and rescue operation. His 4 arms moved rapidly across holographic displays as he analyzed the asteroid's structure and identified the safest approach routes. "The human female saved 2 of my people during the mining ship rescue," he explained to his crew. "Honor demands that we return the favor." Inside the tunnels, Sarah could hear her pursuers getting closer. Their searchlights cast eerie shadows on the tunnel walls as they methodically cleared each passage. She had managed to acquire one of their dropped weapons, a compact energy rifle of unknown design, but she was still outnumbered and outgunned. The confrontation came in a wide chamber that had once housed mining equipment. Sarah found herself face to face with 4 figures in environmental suits, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. They raised their weapons, clearly intending to eliminate the only witness to their attack. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Sarah said calmly, her own weapon trained on the lead figure. The response came in a language she didn't recognize, followed by the sound of weapon safeties being disengaged. Sarah dove for cover behind a massive piece of abandoned machinery just as energy blasts lit up the chamber. The firefight was brief, but intense. Sarah used her superior knowledge of the chamber's layout to outmaneuver her attackers, picking them off one by one until only the leader remained. When she finally cornered the figure in a dead-end tunnel, she was shocked to discover something that would change everything. The attacker's environmental suit bore markings she recognized. Krillian military insignia, but not from any official unit. These were rogue elements, extremists who opposed their government's new cooperation with humanity. "Why?" Sarah demanded, keeping her weapon trained on the figure. "Why attack an unarmed patrol vessel?" The Krillian's translator crackled with static before producing words in accented standard. "Because your compassion is a weapon more dangerous than any fleet. You make our people question the old ways. You threaten the balance of power that has existed for centuries." Sarah stared at her would-be assassin with growing understanding. "You're afraid that peace might actually work." "Peace is weakness," the Krillian spat. "Your rescue operation showed our people that humans can be trusted. Now they want to work with you, to learn from you, to become like you. It threatens everything we have built." The rescue teams found them 20 minutes later, Sarah standing guard over a subdued Krillian extremist, who would become key evidence in the investigation that followed. The attack on a U.S. Marine had been planned and executed by radical elements within the very species that now claimed to want peace. But perhaps the most significant moment came as Sarah was being escorted back to the surface. As they passed through the main mining chamber, she stopped to examine something that had caught her eye during the firefight. A memorial plaque mounted on the tunnel wall. The inscription was in multiple languages, including standard galactic and several alien scripts. It commemorated the 47 miners who had died in a cave-in 60 years earlier before Sarah was even born. Zephyrians, Krillians, humans, and others who had worked together in dangerous conditions to extract rare minerals from this very asteroid. "They were mining partners," Admiral Chen said quietly as he read the plaque over Sarah's shoulder. different species, working side by side, long before anyone thought peace was possible. Sarah nodded slowly. The treaty didn't keep us apart. Fear did. Fear of each other, fear of change, fear of admitting we might have more in common than we thought. As they emerged from the asteroid's tunnels, Sarah found herself face to face with the most diverse rescue fleet in galactic history. Human vessels flew in formation with Zephyrian cruisers, Krillian fighters, and Theros exploration ships. The sight should have been impossible according to 2 centuries of political doctrine. But sometimes the impossible happens when someone is willing to cross a line to help a stranger. Sometimes peace begins with a single act of courage. And sometimes the future starts when a Marine answers a distress call, regardless of who made it or what the politics might be. The shot fired at Sarah Mitchell had been meant to silence her forever, to prevent her from spreading the dangerous idea that former enemies could become friends. Instead, it had revealed the true enemy, not the aliens who wanted peace, but the extremists on all sides who profited from fear and division. The Treaty of Proxima had held for 200 years, maintained by careful balance and mutual suspicion. But as Sarah looked out at the joint rescue fleet, she realized that something new was beginning. Not a treaty based on fear, but an alliance built on trust. And it had all started when someone fired on a U.S. Marine who refused to let innocent people die, regardless of the consequences.